Imagine this. You are alone in a quiet room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every failed relationship like a scene from a film you've seen too many times. You've analyzed every conversation, every choice, every moment where things began to unravel. You know exactly what went wrong. You could write an entire thesis on the psychology of your past relationships, on attachment styles, emotional avoidance, cognitive biases. And yet, when it comes to love, you feel like a stranger to your own heart. You've built a mind sharp enough to dissect the world, but when it comes to relationships, all that intelligence becomes a double-edged sword. You understand too much, question too deeply, see through illusions too quickly. While others seem to fall effortlessly into love, you stand at the edges, observing, calculating, hesitating. You crave connection, yet something in you resists it. And here lies the paradox. If intelligence is a strength, why does it so often become a weakness in love? Shouldn't being smart help you navigate relationships better? Shouldn't deeper understanding lead to deeper connection? And yet, time and time again, the most analytical minds find themselves struggling with the simplest, most universal human experience: intimacy. You've seen it before. The overthinkers, the intellectuals, the ones who can debate philosophy for hours but freeze in the presence of genuine vulnerability. The ones who crave deep, meaningful conversations yet feel alienated in social settings. The ones who are capable of extraordinary insights but struggle with the most basic expression of affection. Why? Why does intelligence, this thing that gives you an edge in so many areas of life, become the very thing that holds you back in love? The answer is not what you think. It's not about social skills or compatibility. It's not about finding the right person or improving communication. Number. It runs much deeper than that. To understand why smart people struggle with love, we have to go beyond the surface, beyond the cliches of modern dating advice, and into the hidden forces of the human psyche, into the realms of philosophy, psychology, and existential fear. Because the real reason has nothing to do with love itself. It has to do with you. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. You have always relied on your mind. It is your fortress, your weapon, your shield. From a young age, you realized that intelligence gave you an advantage. It allowed you to predict outcomes, anticipate dangers, and understand people in ways they couldn't even understand themselves. But here's the problem. Love doesn't work like logic. Love is not a system to be decoded. It is not a puzzle to be solved. It is unpredictable, chaotic, filled with contradictions that defy rational thought. And for a mind that thrives on clarity, that's terrifying. Carl Jung once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What if your struggles with love are not about intelligence at all, but about what your intelligence is protecting you from? Because intelligence is not just a tool, it is also a defense mechanism. At some point in your life, you learned that the world is complex, that people are flawed, that vulnerability is dangerous. Maybe you grew up as the smart one, the observer, the outsider, the one who always seemed to understand things faster than others. Maybe you saw relationships fall apart, witnessed the irrationality of human emotions, or experienced rejection so deeply that you promised yourself you'd never let it happen again. So you built a strategy. You turned to analysis as a way to control the unknown. Instead of feeling emotions fully, you dissect them. Instead of surrendering to love, you evaluate it. You look for patterns, inconsistencies, hidden motives, trying to find certainty where certainty doesn't exist. But love cannot be controlled, and that is where the struggle begins. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that the greatest human fear is not death, it is losing oneself. Love requires you to do exactly that. It demands a surrender of the self, an abandonment of certainty, a willingness to step into the unknown. And for an intelligent mind, accustomed to structure and mastery, this is an unbearable proposition. So you hesitate, you pull back when things get too intense. You find flaws in others too quickly. You rationalize your way out of vulnerability. You convince yourself that no one truly understands you, that people are shallow, that relationships are overrated, that solitude is better. But deep down, there is another truth, one you don't often admit to yourself. Beneath all the analysis, beneath all the justifications, there is fear. Not fear of love itself, but fear of what love demands from you. Because love does not care about intelligence. It does not reward analysis. It does not grant control. It asks for something far more difficult. It asks for surrender. And for the highly intelligent, surrender is the ultimate challenge. You tell yourself that love will come when the right person appears, that you are simply waiting for someone who matches your depth, your intellect, your complexity. But what if that's not true? What if the struggle isn't about finding the right person, but about what happens when you do? Because here is the unseen consequence of your intelligence. Your mind is always searching for an escape hatch. The moment love feels too real, too consuming, too unpredictable, something inside you starts to resist. Maybe you become distant. Maybe you start intellectualizing your feelings. Maybe you focus on their imperfections, picking apart their flaws as if you're trying to convince yourself that they are not the one. But here's the deeper question. Is it really about them? Or is it about you protecting yourself from something you don't fully understand? Jean-Paul Sartre believed that love presents a unique existential dilemma, the fear of losing yourself to another. When you love deeply, you become vulnerable, not just to pain, but to transformation. Love demands change. It forces you to confront parts of yourself that you would rather leave untouched. And for someone who has spent a lifetime mastering their own mind, this is a terrifying prospect. Because intelligence creates distance. It allows you to stand apart, to observe from the outside, to analyze without fully participating. But love demands the opposite. It requires immersion, presence, the ability to let go of control. This is why highly intelligent people often struggle with relationships, not because they lack social skills or because they are too deep for others, but because their intelligence becomes a barrier to raw, unfiltered experience. Instead of being swept away by love, they hold onto the shore, analyzing the waves, fearing the unknown depths. This fear manifests in many ways. Some overthink every relationship to death, dissecting emotions until they become abstract concepts rather than real experiences. Others become addicted to the idea of an unattainable love, fantasizing about deep, profound connections that never materialize in reality. Some fall into cycles of emotional detachment, mistaking self-sufficiency for strength, convincing themselves that they are better off alone. And society reinforces this belief. The world tells you that being highly independent is a sign of strength. That logic should always override emotion. That deep thinkers are different and destined to walk alone. But is that really true? Or is it just another illusion? A convenient justification for avoiding the terrifying, transformative power of love? Because here is the most painful consequence of all. By refusing to surrender to love, you don't just protect yourself from pain. You also protect yourself from the one thing that has the power to change you in ways nothing else can. And deep down, some part of you already knows this. The question is, what will you do about it? You've spent years mastering your mind. You've built walls of reason, sharpened the blade of intellect, and used analysis as both a weapon and a shield. You have trained yourself to see through illusions, to question, to doubt. But what if the real illusion was the one you created for yourself? What if intelligence is not the problem, but how you've been using it? For most of your life, you've viewed love as something to be understood, something to be managed. You've sought clarity, patterns, and certainty. But love does not reward control. It rewards presence. It rewards those who are willing to step into the unknown, not those who try to map it from a distance. The rebellion, the way out of this struggle, is not about suppressing your intelligence. It is about learning when to let go of it. Step 1. Stop intellectualizing. Start feeling. You do not need to analyze love to experience it. You do not need to categorize emotions to feel them. You have spent so much time understanding relationships that you may have forgotten how to actually live them. The next time you feel drawn to someone, resist the urge to dissect. Instead, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Not what does this mean? Not what is the future of this? But what am I feeling? Stay there. Let yourself feel without needing to translate it into logic, because love is not something to be solved. It is something to be lived. Step 2. Accept the fear and surrender. Anyway, fear is not the enemy. It is a sign that you are standing at the edge of something real. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." If your why is connection, if your why is love, then you must be willing to bear the how, the discomfort, the unpredictability, the vulnerability. Every time you feel the urge to pull away, to rationalize yourself out of intimacy, recognize it for what it is, a defense mechanism, a reflex, not the truth. Step 3. Embrace imperfection. The highly intelligent often struggle with love because they expect too much, both from themselves and from others. They see flaws too quickly, overanalyze minor inconsistencies, and expect relationships to make perfect sense. But love is not perfect. It is messy, irrational, deeply human. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that human suffering stems from expectation, our inability to accept things as they are. The secret to freeing yourself from the struggle of love is to let go of the expectation that it must always make sense. Because love isn't meant to be understood. It is meant to be experienced, flawed, and beautiful, just as it is. Step 4. Be willing to lose yourself. You have spent so much time protecting yourself from being consumed by another that you have never truly allowed yourself to merge with another. But love, real love, requires a temporary dissolution of the self. It is not about losing your individuality forever. It is about allowing yourself to dissolve, if only for a moment, in the presence of another soul. This is not weakness. This is transformation. And transformation has always been the ultimate goal of intelligence: to grow, to evolve, to move beyond the limitations of the mind. So the question remains, are you willing to step beyond your own intellect? Because if you are, what lies ahead is not just love, but a version of yourself that you have never met before. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you believed about love was incomplete. That love was never something to be mastered, nor something you could outthink. That the very intelligence you've relied on, the thing that has guided you through life, helped you solve problems, and protected you from pain, has also been the thing keeping you from the one experience that could truly set you free. Because here is the ultimate truth. Love is the one thing that requires you to abandon everything you think you know. It is the great equalizer. It does not care about your IQ, your knowledge, your ability to predict patterns. It does not reward intellect, it rewards presence. It rewards those who are willing to be seen, not through their ideas, their wit, or their intellect, but in the raw, unfiltered essence of who they are. And that is why intelligence struggles with love, because love is not a process of knowing, but a process of unbecoming. Unbecoming the person who overthinks every emotion, unbecoming the person who intellectualizes their way out of intimacy, unbecoming the person who believes they must always be in control. Love asks of you something far greater than understanding. It asks for surrender, to let go of the need to define, to categorize, to analyze, to sit in the uncertainty and trust it anyway, to feel the fear of being vulnerable and lean into it rather than away. And in that surrender, something extraordinary happens. You realize that love was never the problem. The problem was the fear of losing yourself in it. But here's the paradox, the greatest one of all. You do not lose yourself in love. You find yourself, not in the way you expected, not in the way your mind tried to predict, but in a way that only love itself could reveal. Through experience, through presence, through the quiet, profound realization that you were never meant to walk through life alone, inside the fortress of your own mind. Because life, in all its depth, its meaning, its complexity, was never meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt. And love is the greatest feeling of all. The question now is simple. Are you ready to stop thinking and start living?